Hello, you beautiful lot. This is not the episode that I planned to release. This is the 100th episode of The Observing Eye, and I had something else in mind. Something reflective, something celebratory, but then I found this. It was a file buried in a folder without a title, just a random string of numbers, and the date on that file was 1974. Which doesn't really make a lot of sense because I wasn't even born then, much to your surprise, I'm sure, let alone having started this podcast. I don't even think podcasts were a thing until I was well into my 20s. At first, I thought it was a mistake. A corrupted audio file, some old project I'd forgotten about, but then I listened, and what I found was me. My voice, my words, talking about things I shouldn't have known back then. And the worst part is I don't remember recording it. So for the 100th episode, we are doing something different. We're releasing this lost tape exactly as I found it. No edits, no explanations. I don't know what this is. Maybe it's nothing. Maybe it's just an old recording I forgot about. But if it's something else, well then you'll have to decide for yourself. This is episode 100, The Lost Tape.
Hello? Is that you? It's Sunday, the 2nd of February, 1974, and you're listening to episode 100 of The Observing Eye, coming at you live from the computer-held cabin. I think I'm trapped in here. Is anyone there?
Aaron, and she talked.
$10 was
Episodes, a century's worth of conversations. If this podcast were a body, it would be old now, wrinkled, sagging, skin drooping under the weight of its own history, and yet here it is, upright, breathing, staring at its reflection and wondering what's next. You've been here, listening, but listening is passive, and nothing about what we do here should be passive. So let's start with a confession, an admission. A secret peeled back like the skin of an orange, revealing that bitter white pith beneath. See, the thing about stories, about myths, about the grand narratives that structure our fragile little reality, is that they have a funny way of swallowing us whole. We don't tell stories, stories tell us. They bend our spines, reshape our skulls. We think we're in control. We think we're weaving some tapestry of meaning, when really we're just tangled in the threads. So let's untangle. Let's look back. Let's revisit the wreckage of the last 99 episodes and sift through the themes like scavengers picking meat from a sun-bleached corpse. First, storytelling. The scaffolding that holds our understanding of reality together. We've talked about it before. The way stories, whether cultural myths, personal narratives, or the quiet little lies we whisper to ourselves before we sleep, shape everything. Everything. Think back. That study we covered. The one about how the way a nation tells its history literally rewrites the present. That's not poetry. That's neuroscience. Political science. Propaganda at work. Tell the right lie often enough and people will believe it more than their own memories. But here's the terrifying part. What happens when the story you're telling yourself is wrong? What happens when the script you've been handed, the one that says who you are, what you can do, how the world works, is flawed? Or worse, a cage. You wake up inside a story. Before your first breath, the plot's already been written. The doctors swaddle you in a colour-coded blanket. Your parents give you a name that isn't yours. They stamp it on a birth certificate, a receipt proving ownership. You never signed up for this, but congratulations, you exist now. An existence comes with a script. You're told what kind of person you are before you even get a chance to figure it out. You're the shy one, you're the smart one, you're the troublemaker. They assign you a role, hand you your lines and expect you to hit your marks. I am Jack's overwhelming sense of inadequacy. Here's where you go to school, here's where you graduate, here's the job you should want, here's the house you can barely afford, here's the person you're supposed to marry, here's where you die, fade to black. And the worst part is that you believe it. Not because it's true, but because the human brain is an addict for story, a junkie that needs meaning injected straight into its veins. It can't just be random events, there has to be cause and effect. There has to be structure, a before and after, a protagonist, a villain, a grand arc. This is how cults are built, how religions work, how politicians sell you a war, how advertisers make you buy things you don't need. They don't convince you, they tell you a better story than the one you're already living. Your entire life, someone else's screenplay. Every society tells a story. Rome said they were destined by the gods. Manifest Destiny said the land belonged to the strong. The American dream says work hard, play by the rules and you'll be rewarded. Lies, all of them. But these lies move history. These lies shape laws. These lies decide who lives in a mansion and who starves under a bridge. Because the real power isn't money or guns or votes, it's controlling the narrative. Control the story, control the people. You don't burn books. You don't censor information. That's amateur hour. The real move is we flood people with so much noise, so many conflicting narratives they don't know what's real anymore. Confusion is control. Paralysis is power. If you can't trust your own memory, your own thoughts, then you're not thinking, you're reacting. That's when critical thinking comes in, when you have to take the hammer to the glass and start shattering illusions. We've seen it in episodes about media literacy, about cognitive biases, about skepticism, the power of stopping, of questioning, of saying, wait, who benefits from this? And that's the key, isn't it? Every story serves someone. Every narrative has a purpose. Sometimes it's to uplift, sometimes it's to control, and sometimes it's just inertia. The same old tale being told because no one's ever stopped to ask if it still makes sense. Then there's the question of who we are. Consciousness, the ghost in the machine, the pulsing, self-aware lump of neurons trying to convince itself it has free will. Freud had ideas, Jung had archetypes. Buddhism tells you that you don't even exist, not in the way you think anyway. We've talked about dualism, the idea that your mind and body are separate. We've talked about non-dualism, the idea that everything is one big interconnected mess. We've talked about AI, about whether machines can ever wake up and realize they exist. Remember that parable we dissected, the Buddhist chariot? Very similar to the ship of Theseus. That whole idea that if you take a thing apart piece by piece, at what point does it stop being that thing? That's you. A bundle of experiences, traumas, preferences and memories, all stitched together and given a name. But if you start pulling the pieces apart, what's left? Who's left? And this is where philosophy crashes headfirst into reality. Because none of this matters if we can't use it. The Greeks, the Stoics, the monks meditating in caves, they weren't just playing intellectual games, they were fighting for survival, for sanity. That's where we get practical. Because we've been talking about Stoicism, about negative visualization, about how thinking about the worst case scenario doesn't make you pessimistic, it makes you ready, prepared, trained for impact, like a boxer rolling with a punch instead of letting it shatter his jaw. Philosophy isn't dead, it just wears a different mask now. You don't see Socrates wandering the streets anymore, but you do see self-help influencers selling his ideas with pastel-coloured Instagram quotes. The Stoics are back, except now they come with branded merchandise. Nietzsche's not in the library, he's an edgy tweet. The great comedy is that we think we're original. We think every existential crisis we had is new. But every thought you've ever had, someone else had it first. Someone else dissected it, bled over it, turned it into a doctrine and stamped their name on it. And now 2,000 years later, you're just rediscovering it like a caveman who thinks he invented fire. We've spent 99 episodes proving it. Every idea recycled, every school of thought a different flavour of the same existential dread. You think you have free will, you think you're making choices. Socrates would have laughed. Then he would have asked you why you believe what you believe, and by the end of the conversation, you'd be questioning whether you even exist. That's the Socratic method, death by 1,000 questions. Then there's Plato, who tells you reality is a cheap knockoff of some perfect, untouchable realm. You think you know truth? You're just some poor bastard chained up in a cave watching shadows dance on the wall, mistaking them for something real. And Aristotle, the scientist of the group, he wanted to classify everything, to put the world into neat little boxes. If Plato's head was in the clouds, Aristotle's was knee-deep in the dirt, cataloguing bugs. This is where it started, the first draft of philosophy. Jump to the east. Buddha would tell you suffering is inevitable because you want too much, that desire is a chain wrapped around your throat, tightening every time you chase something you think will make you happy. You can escape, but only if you kill the part of yourself that's always craving more. Taoism takes it further. Stop forcing things. Stop fighting the river. Let go, move with the current. Wu Wei, effortless action, the ultimate middle finger to hustle culture. And Sufism, the mystics who dance their way into enlightenment, who chase God like a mad lover, who believe the self is something to be dissolved, not celebrated. Try explaining that to a modern self-help guru. Fast forward to the 20th century and suddenly meaning is dead. Sartre tells you that you have radical freedom, that you can define yourself, but most of you are too scared to do it, so you pretend you have no choice. That's bad faith, and it's the lie you live every day. Nietzsche dropped his bombshell. God is dead, not literally, but the old moral systems, the safety nets, the rules that kept us in line, gone. So now what? Either you crumble under the weight of meaninglessness or you become the Ubermensch, the one who creates meaning instead of waiting for it. Stoicism is trendy now. Marcus Aurelius' Meditations is practically a self-help book. Control what you can, accept what you can't. Sounds easy until your life is crumbling and you're gripping onto control like a drowning man clutching a rock. Epictetus, the slave-turned-philosopher, would tell you freedom isn't about your circumstances, it's about mastering your mind. You can be in chains and still be freer than a king. Philosophy isn't about answers, it's about better questions. It's about seeing the strings pulling your thoughts, the invisible forces shaping your beliefs, and asking, do I actually believe this, or was it given to me? You've heard me say it before. Control what you can, let go of what you can't. And in between, that's where you exist. That's where life happens. We live so much of our lives in transition, between jobs, between relationships, between versions of ourselves that we barely recognize. These are liminal spaces, the gaps between one chapter closing and another opening. And they can be terrifying. We covered this in the episodes on change, on existential fear, on the uncanny experience of stepping into the unknown and realizing there is no script. Just a blank page, the void, and you. The philosopher Alan Watts called this the backwards law, the idea that the more you desperately grasp for security, the more insecure you become. That certainty is an illusion, and the only way to move forward is to embrace that uncertainty. Let go, dive in, trust that you will surface. Then there are the unseen chains that bind us. The world isn't made of atoms, it's made of influence. You wake up, and before your feet hit the floor, you're being shaped and pushed and manipulated. The information you consume, the social cues you absorb, the expectations you accept without even knowing you're accepting them. It's all one big invisible force field pressing against the meat of your mind. And it's everywhere. The ad playing before your favourite podcast, the headline you skimmed but didn't read, the way the algorithm knows you better than your own mother. We've talked about that before, psychological warfare, not in some military briefing room but in your pocket. Social media feeds engineered to keep you angry, news headlines crafted like slot machines paying out tiny dopamine hits in exchange for your obedience. You are the battlefield, your mind is the prize. History's been here before. World War I propaganda leaflets dropped from planes. Keep 'em rile up, make the enemy doubt, loose lips sink ships. But today it's not leaflets, it's viral tweets, AI-generated outrage, deepfake videos engineered to bypass your critical thinking and hijack your emotions. Who benefits from your fear, your anxiety, your need to belong? The answer is always someone, and it's never you. And when you start to notice, when you start to wake up, they've already got a solution for you. A self-help book, a course, some charismatic guru who promises that if you just change your mindset, you'll break free. Just manifest harder, just hustle more, just grind until your bones turn to dust. Here's the trick. Self-help doesn't actually help. It keeps you stuck. Because if you ever actually got better, they'd lose you. And losing you means losing money. So they sell you an addiction to self-improvement, a treadmill where the finish line never gets closer. And every failure, that's on you. You weren't disciplined enough. You weren't positive enough. You didn't believe hard enough. Not the system, not the structures, not the forces that profit off your dissatisfaction, just you. Happiness is the ultimate scam, the product they sell you with a neon sale sign flashing behind it. Buy this, try this, meditate, manifest, pray, hustle, smile more. It's all a fucking racket and you are the perfect customer. Because happiness is never the thing itself. It's always one step ahead of you, dangling like a carrot on a stick. You reach for it and suddenly it's moved another foot forward. Get the job, get the house, get the girl, get the guy, get the six-pack abs, get the pay raise, get the car, get the life you saw in an ad. And when you get it, the feeling lasts about as long as a sugar high, then you're hungry again. Psychologists call it the hedonic treadmill. You chase happiness, you catch it, it slips through your fingers like sand. So you run harder, thinking maybe next time, maybe with a bigger paycheck, maybe with a better relationship, maybe with a different body. The machine keeps moving, you keep running, you never get anywhere. Buddhism figured this out before dopamine receptors were even a concept. The moment you want something, you suffer. The minute you have something, you take it for granted. Your brain adjusts, resets the baseline. You were miserable before you had it, and guess what? You'll be miserable after, because happiness was never in the thing itself, it was in the chase. Maybe you think, no, my happiness is real, my happiness is different. And sure, maybe for 5 minutes it is. Maybe the paycheck clears, the car smell is fresh, the vacation sun warms your skin, and for a fleeting moment, everything is perfect. Then the car payments start. The inbox fills with work emails, the vacation ends, and suddenly your paradise is just another photo on your phone. Back to square one, back to the craving, back to needing the next thing. The ancient Greeks had 2 words for happiness, hedonia and eudaimonia. Hedonia is the sugar rush, the spike in dopamine when you swipe the credit card, the thrill of validation when someone likes your post. Hedonia is the drug, the impulse, the quick fix. Eudaimonia, that's something else. Aristotle talked about it like a kind of fulfillment, a long-term satisfaction that comes from purpose, from virtue, from actually being someone worth being, not just having, not just consuming, being. But that's harder. That takes work. No quick dopamine hits, no flashing lights, no applause. Just you in the quiet, doing the right thing even when nobody's watching. And that's the problem. Most people don't want happiness. They want distraction. They want stimulation. They want the idea of happiness, the thing sold in shiny packaging, the thing that makes you forget for 5 minutes that you don't actually know who the hell you are. The lie isn't just happiness. The lie is perfection. The glossy, retouched, filtered world they sell you. The ideal body, the ideal career, the ideal life, where you never screw up, never falter, never fall apart. Perfection is a corpse, dead, unmoving, untouchable. The only perfect things in this world are the ones that have stopped growing. Perfection is the end of the story, the flat line at the end of the EKG. Real life, it's messy, it's flawed, it's riddled with mistakes and scars and screw-ups that leave you wiser, harder and stronger. The cracks in you, that's where the light gets in. The flaws, that's where the real you is. Look at the Japanese art of kintsugi. When something breaks, when a vase shatters, they don't throw it away, they piece it back together with gold. They make the breakage part of the beauty, the cracks become the art. But modern life teaches you the opposite. Hide the scars, erase the wrinkles, edit out the flaws. You walk around pretending you're whole when in reality you're a fucking collage of every mistake you've ever made. And that's the way it should be. They tell you you're not good enough, not pretty enough, not successful enough, and then conveniently they sell you the fix. The cream, the course, the diet plan, the app that promises to optimize your life down to the second so you never waste a breath. And what they don't tell you is that chasing perfection is a war with no victory. Because the goalpost moves, the trends change, the standard is designed to be unattainable. If you ever actually reached it, they'd be out of business. So stop fighting a battle you were never meant to win. Start seeing the beauty in the scars, the poetry in the imperfections. You are not a finished product. You never will be. And thank fuck for that. Which leads me nicely into compassion. That ugly, inconvenient truth. That all of this knowledge, all of this insight means nothing if we use it to bludgeon ourselves into human pulp. We live in a culture of hustle, of grind, of never enough. And we've talked about the damage that does. The way it carves people down to bones, leaves them chasing something they can't even define. So what do? You stop. You breathe. You treat yourself with the same fucking kindness you give a friend who was struggling. You stop being your own executioner. Put down the axe, my friends. box up the guillotine. And if you can do that, if you can question the stories, sharpen your mind, embrace discomfort, and be kind to yourself in the process, then you start to realize something terrifying. You are not the victim of your life. You're the author. That's what all of this has been leading to. This is the moment when you take the pen back. When you realize that if the story sucks, you can rewrite it. You can change the characters, you can flip the genre, you can burn the whole fucking thing down and start again. So now I ask you, what story are you going to tell? That's it. That's all there is. The choice, the realization, and the next step. The first line of your next chapter. That's up to you.
Oscar, Mike, Bravo.